So, welcome to today's show. I have with me today Neha Arora, and she is with Planet Abled, and she is a accessible tour guide and runs an accessible tour company. And so, we're going to talk with her today about things that she can help people that travel with challenges do. So, welcome to the show, Aurora. You want to give us a little bit of background about yourself and your company?
Sure. So thanks, Ken, for having me here. It's a pleasure. I represent a company called Planet Able, which promotes the concept of accessible and inclusive travel for people of all disabilities. And I started the company because both my parents are persons with disabilities. My dad is blind and mother is a wheelchair user. So we could never go for a holiday as a child. And when I grew up and started traveling, it was never ending in a very good experience. So I just took the matter in my hands and started this travel journey.
Okay. Well, very nice. And we talked before the show, our last conversation, we had talked about the fact that you and I both started because of things that we ran into, in trying to plan accessible travel. And so it's like, okay, I started a YouTube channel to help people find answers. You started a company to help people travel better. So very cool. Okay. So tell us about some of the areas of the world that you operate in. We'll start with that.
So we Sure. So we operate in like 40 plus destinations. Primarily, most of them are in Asia at the moment, but we are opening Europe. We were to open Europe in 2020, but thanks to COVID, that did not happen. So hopefully this year we'll do that.
Okay. And so give me an example of a destination and the kinds of tours that you have there.
If I have to really name the destinations, you can think of any place across India, countries like Sri Lanka, Nepal, Thailand, Vietnam, Hong Kong, Singapore. These are the destinations that we cover at the moment. And Germany is the next in line, just ready to be told to the world that it's open.
Okay. So you mentioned Thailand. So if I wanted to go to Thailand and I needed an accessible tour, give me some examples of what we could do in Thailand with you to enjoy the visit to the country.
Okay, so I will say at any destination that we operate in, we try to inculcate a lot of authentic and local experiences. So, could go to a strawberry farm or spend time with a local family or a cooking workshop. Apart from, in addition to doing all the things that the touristy things that are there on the line. So it's always a mix of uh, these touristy experiences and local authentic experiences at each destination.
Okay. And that's unusual in the accessible tour space because a lot of times it's just the museums and the major items, but you say so you try to build in some local experience and to help people get maybe a better understanding and a feel for the culture of the country. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Because until and unless you have sat with the local people or shared a meal with them or understood why something is in their culture and why do they do what they do, have you really traveled? I mean, that's the way I personally like to travel, and that is what I want to give our travelers the same kind of experience. And disability is no barrier to do that.
Okay, I love that because I love the concept. For me, a huge part of travel is understanding the people, and again, I love the why things are the way they are. It was interesting. I told you I lived in Japan for a while, and we saw things that in other places might be viewed as totally weird, strange, just completely unacceptable, but they were normal parts of the behavior. And then when I studied the history and the culture of Japan, I started to understand the why of it. Part of it
Yeah.
goes back to when you lived in houses with paper walls, which was very common in Japan. You had to create your own sense of privacy in your mind because there was no real privacy.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so that carried on to things you would see out in if you're out just traveling around, you'd see things and you're like, okay, why? But that's the part of what you get from understanding. Um, And Thailand is one of those places that I would love to visit. It starts because I am a huge Thai food fan.
Oh, okay.
And it's interesting. I worked for a man that had been in the military in Thailand, and he told a lot of stories. And I had a friend whose wife was from Thailand, and so it's one of those places that I would love to visit. I love the art. I see so many things. Um, a good example is places like Pattaya Beach and some of the places that are just so amazingly beautiful. So let me ask this question then. If we were going to do a trip to Thailand, and we're going to come back to cruising in a little bit because that's where a lot of my people that watch my channel, how they travel. But if I was going to do a land accessible trip to Thailand, walk me through what we might do and how long I should plan on to make the trip a good trip.
So, see, when you are on a cruise, I mean, the limitation that I see at most of the shore excursion is that you have limited time because this is the time you got to leave the ship, and this is the time by when you have to reach back the ship,
Yeah.
right? And most of the time, you just have a day at a port, and so the next day when you sail, and the third day you reach another port, and then there is another shore excursion for that matter, right? So it's important that if you are docking at a shore, firstly and more importantly, I would say we take the accessibility assessment of every traveler with us, because until and unless we understand the accessibility needs, it's not possible to provide a seamless travel experience, whether it's a few hours or whether it's 3 weeks or 4 weeks. We need to understand that, okay, where you will need assistance and how, so that while you're traveling, there is no barrier at all. Everything is just ready on a plate, right? So that is the first part of if you are wanting to travel with us. That's the first step to planning. Then once you are traveling, so okay, which port are you going to dock at? And then your interest. Okay, what are your interests? Because one city can offer you so many things, but in those few hours, you can only do so much,
Right.
right? So, okay, so if you are docking at a port and you are like a fan of Thai food for that matter, we'll take you to a food tour across that city where that is the theme of your whole trip. And then you see things around that instead of, oh, we'll check this monuments out and food is just a side part of lunch and a breakfast. I mean, why? If food is what you love, let's go for a food tour, and the monuments and other places can just happen at the side.
Okay, and that's so funny because that would suit me just fine. I think a food tour because, and I think a lot of the things that I like would be street food even. And it's funny because a lot of people are uh, a little bit fussy about where they eat. And I visited the Philippines several times, and when I was in the Philippines, I'd eat. They had vendors that sold beef and chicken, and I have no idea if it was really beef or chicken. I didn't care; it tasted good. As long as I thought it was beef and chicken, it was fine. But I would eat. I mean, they just. One time we made a trip through Mexico, and I ate enchiladas out of a bucket because they came on board with these enchiladas wrapped up on a bucket, no silverware, no plate, just here's enchiladas. And the aftermath was cleaning up was a little bit of a challenge, but they were fine. And it's another thing that's interesting is in all of my travels, with one exception, when I was really young in Mexico, I've never gotten sick. My thought is if people that live there are eating there, I can eat there and it'll be fine. But anyway, let's get off of food. I could talk about food all day. Okay, so let's say I fly to Thailand. I'm gonna do a fly-in trip. So if I was starting to plan this flying trip, first step you said was to talk to you guys, and so you can do the assessment. Now I'll give you a little bit of information because my wife, she can't sit for long periods of time with sitting upright, so she needs her wheelchair reclines, and she can walk a little bit, but again, she's not great at walking long distances. And if she does, we take her wheelchair because she uses it as a walker. So now let's say that I have a week. What are some of the things that we might just include in a trip that would match her accessibility? I know it's just a spur of the moment thing, but just a few ideas.
Okay, so here, the information that you provided. So if you have to go to that floating street food market, I might need to have more accessibility information that whether she'll be able to do that or not before even deciding, like putting it on the itinerary. That is one main aspect of it. Then the rest part of it, even when you're flying, you need to have the right set of codes on your ticket before even flying. So we will tell you, okay, based on her needs, she needs this kind of code on her airline because most of the travelers don't know that. They're not aware that you need to tell the airline there are three types of codes for a wheelchair user, depending upon what your needs are. So you need to tell the airline also and get it on your ticket that this is what I need. Yes, we've had so many like travelers who booked without that discussion, and then they were like stuck at airports without their own wheelchairs while they were in between the flights. So to avoid all of that, the preparation starts from there, like getting it on the ticket.
Yep.
It's the first
We
step
all,
you gotta do.
yeah, we always gate check the wheelchair just for that reason, so that then we have it to get her off. Yeah, and again, it is. I have the advantage that I'm a travel agent and I work with a lot of these kinds of things, so I understand that. But again, a lot of travelers don't know, so that is one of the things that's very useful. Okay, so I get to, let's say I'm probably flying into Bangkok.
Yeah, that's the international airport that you most probably will flying in. Yes.
So I
Yeah.
fly into Bangkok.
Yeah.
Where do we go from there?
Okay, so there'll be a car waiting for you up there with a person who needs that. Okay, this is what the needs of the traveler who are coming in would be, right? And along with the local guide. So normally when people arrive at the day, that day we keep it free because most of the people after a long flight need rest, right? Especially people with mobility impairments, they would need rest or any other medical conditions, right? So that day you keep it as a rest. Of course, we'll tell you, okay, you can go out in the city for a stroll in the evening if you want, but the hotels are all verified as per the needs. That's why the assessment happens. So it would completely be pre-audited by us, and you would be able to. So there's no fuss once you enter the hotel because that
Okay.
also happened to a lot of people. They get into a room and they realize, oh, the bed is not right, or the mattress is not right, or the room does not have any handlebars or things like that. So these sort of surprises should not happen once you reach that hotel.
Oh, very nice. And it's interesting because I did a tour, a video tour of a hotel, and they showed me an accessible room, but they only had like one grab rail that wasn't very convenient for the toilet. And for my wife, it would probably have been okay, but for people that need two hands to get on and off the toilet, not having that second grab bar would be a real deal breaker.
Yes, absolutely. So you need to keep in mind that not all disabled people are the same and their needs are different and it has to perfectly match while they're traveling. That's very, very important.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we spent the night at the hotel. We wake up, we're refreshed, we're ready to go. So what are we going to tour Bangkok, or are we headed somewhere else?
Okay, so of course, when you're in the city, the first day you have to stay in the city because you need to see the city you are in, right? So you will say, okay, so like when you are a foodie, right? So we'll plan. There is a midnight food tour that you can take in the evening, right? So that is one set for you in the evening. Then there is a railway tour that is there. If you have the time and you want to do it, you can do that. Or there are some Buddhist temples that you can go to, depending upon whether it would be accessible for your wife. That also matters because not all temples are accessible. So we keep only those things on the itinerary that match the accessibility needs. And all of this discussion happens before you book the tour. So we'll tell you, okay, this place is accessible, this place is not accessible. Or if we are making a temporary arrangement, this is the temporary arrangement. So there is not a ramp here, but we'll put a temporary ramp out there for you. Are you comfortable with it? Because sometimes people are afraid to take that leap. Or, if there is one step, it might be possible for a manual wheelchair user to take that. But for an electric wheelchair user, it might not be possible. So that goes out of the picture. So all of these mix and matches for each place is meticulously being planned. Okay, can you go to this place or you cannot go to this place? That is all pre-decided before you leave your home.
Okay. So we spent a day. So let's say we talked about the midnight food tower, and sign me up for that one.
Oh,
So
yes.
so let's just say that
Yes.
in Bangkok, and this is an interesting question because I talked to I did an interview with Josh Grisdale about Japan, and in Japan you can get by with an electric wheel or I don't want to say electric chair because that gets me in trouble, but a power wheelchair is okay in Japan, but a scooter is not. So in places like Thailand, is
Yeah.
a scooter, does a scooter work, or are you better with the power wheelchair?
So Thailand is not a very, very, so to say, very accessible country, right? So
Okay.
it depends where you're getting in. So if you're putting up a ramp there, and we have at the destination that we are going to, we have a tubular ramp, right? The portable tubular ramp. So a scooter won't walk on it. So if you have a three-wheel scooter or a four-wheel scooter, that will also decide whether you can go there or not,
Okay.
because there also the scooters also have different permutations and combinations. So where a four wheel scooter can go in, a power wheelchair can go in.
Okay.
But some countries also have legal things associated with them. Okay, you this power wheelchairs are allowed, like some places in some of the train services, the scooters are not allowed, but the wheelchairs are allowed. So it really depends upon, like, the Thailand has no such legislation like that. Like, there's no
Okay.
legislative conflict. The conflict would lie the place that you're going to.
Okay. So let me go just to the accessible vehicles you use. So in general, and not asking specifics, but in general, would you have vehicles that could accommodate a scooter or a power chair, or you do have? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, but not at all the places. It's like in this part of the world, so to say, it's only available in bigger cities. So if you're going to, most of the time you'll be landing in a bigger city. So if
Yeah.
you're moving around to smaller cities, you'll take that vehicle only. So you won't have it locally. You'll have to take it from the bigger city to the smaller city.
Okay. All right. Okay. So and that makes sense. And again, because I've never traveled in that part of the world, and when my
It's
wife and
high
I were
time
in
you do.
yeah, it is. Oh, I have so many places I want to go, Neha. I could leave tomorrow and not come back, and be okay with that. I love travel. It's my favorite thing. That's why I like talking about it. So the depending on the mode of their transportation, that would depend on what sites they could see and what and places they could visit. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll say we're taking my wife's wheelchair, which collapses, and it's a manual wheelchair, and we've done some touring in and around Bangkok area. So what else might we put? Again, we have a week. So what else might we just put on the agenda?
So I would say if you just have a week, you just do Bangkok and go to Chiang Mai. Chiang Mai is, like, what do you say, the cultural hub of the city. You have a lot of community-based experiences out there. You can spend times with the elephant as well. So it has, you go to the strawberry farm, interact with the local communities who still live in between the fields that they grow the stuff in. So so not for people with mobility impairment, but so for a blind person, you can even live in those houses. So you can even rent a place if living in between the field. But for you, it won't be possible. Most of the places, you'll have to stay in a big hotel, a modern hotel, and then you can go for excursions. So, like, the homestays are not accessible for wheelchair users, unfortunately, as yet.
Yeah.
So So that experience won't be possible for you. But of course, you can go and do a day visit and then come back. And most of it would have to be facilitated with temporary arrangements like this.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so, where's Angkor Wat at? Is that close, or isn't that a big tourist attraction?
Angkor Wat is Cambodia. That's a different
Oh, that's
country.
Cambodia. Okay, I'm sorry. I get them confused sometimes where things are because I see that's what you get when I don't prepare questions. I just talk. Is I put my foot in my mouth regularly. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but that's like one of our team members. She's a person with disability. She has been there. She's an amputee. She has been there. There is a bit of challenge, but it is possible to do with temporary arrangements. But it's not that accessible, but it's worth making that effort with temporary arrangements to go and visit them. It's worth all
Okay.
of it.
Okay. So, and now I know that Thailand it has some renowned beaches. We mentioned Pattaya Beach. So, what are some of the other places in Thailand if you're into beach and water types of things?
So Pattaya is one of the places that Thailand is famous for in terms of beaches. And there is a small island also out there, which is Koh Samui, which is called, right? So that is like one corner where, which has a Buddha temple to it, a good, very, very good nightlife, and pristine beaches, so to say. So it's more like, because not many people venture out there. Like, of course, Thailand has a lot of tourists. It's a completely touristy country, so to say. So it's all the more important that you stay in the bigger cities for a while, explore the metro life. But it's also important that you reach out to like these small towns like Chiang Mai or this Koh Samui, where you have less of these tourist places, touristy, and you have space to breathe.
Yeah, I'm a fan of like I said off the beaten path. I just I think about the places that I've read about and heard about, and so I ask about them.
Yeah,
Okay.
and there's
So
a lot of river cruises that you can take there while you are there. So, just go for a few hours, take a river cruise across. Scenery is pretty awesome, and it's just nature and fresh air.
okay, so you say they're river cruises. Are these like short river cruises, long river cruises? What kind of time
So,
frame are we talking?
so, these are mostly, like day ones. These are not overnight ones most of the
Okay.
time. Yeah, so these are like, people visit there, take that and spend a day or half a day or a few hours. Like for Bangkok has the nightlife cruises that you can go for a river cruise in the evening and have meal on the deck. And, these are just dinner river cruises kind of a thing with all the lights around and buzzing city around, and you just have a good time and then come back.
Okay. All right. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. Uh, let's say you mentioned. Let's see. You mentioned Singapore. Singapore is a place that cruise ships visit. Another place I've never visited. So let's say we were going to do. Let's start with a cruise tour out of Singapore, and then maybe we'll talk about if we go in to spend a little time in Singapore.
Okay, so Singapore, I would say it's a pretty, for wheelchair users, it's a very, very accessible country. And they, instead of we have to make temporary arrangements, all the establishments that you go to, so it has got really good, say, bird park, the Jurong Bird Park, or, the night safari amongst the animals, or the zoological park, and all of that is accessible. Even the train, the internal train that they have is accessible. They have temporary ramps at every place which they carry in the train, and they'll open it for you if you're a wheelchair user, and you can just hop in and get down anywhere at each of the stations, spend time with the animals, all the birds, feed the animals yourself. They give you priority if you're a person with disability. So you can go there and, say, feed a giraffe, or feed a bird, or feed a hippopotamus. so, it's, I think these are like very great places, and you can even rent a scooter there. They have these facilities as well. So if you're not carrying your own scooter, you can rent it out there.
Okay. Well, very nice. So you mentioned some things. What else would we want to see in Singapore? If
So Singapore is a cosmopolitan city or a country, so to say. So there are different towns. So it has Little India, which is like you feel like India in that part. And it has Chinatown, will feel like the complete Chinatown feel. And it has the Arabic area where you have the Arabs living in. So, and all of these have street hawker markets for food, which is
ah,
like
okay, sign me
and
up again.
yeah, so and authentic food. So you will not feel that you are in Singapore because the metro Singapore is a totally different place out there. And if you go to these parts, you'll feel, oh, I've arrived in that area only. You get exactly the same vibe in the Chinatown or Little India, and these they have huge, well organized street hawker markets where they serve authentic cuisine of each country they are from. So not just the cuisine, there is an adjacent market where can you buy local stuff as well. So it's all of that, that's a cultural amalgamation on all of it. Or you can go to Clarky Quay and spend a night like evening sipping a drink, sitting by the river, or take a river cruise as well. So one of the companies, only one of them provides accessible ramp to get onto the cruise, which takes a bit of human assistance. So you can take that river cruise as well. And so that's one. Then you have the metro areas, the very nice museums. The National Museum is very, very nice, very modern, actually. They have these digital exhibition going on that you can say, and you're into a different world because it's all 3D and with all the technology amalgamation into it. That's amazing. And what else do you see? I told you a lot of things. Yeah, and they have accessible toilets everywhere.
Okay.
Everywhere you'll find accessible toilets. So that you don't find in India, you don't find in Thailand, and a lot of groundwork needs to be done. Singapore is like totally accessible that way. Every public place you go to, you'll have a toilet.
Ah, very nice. And that is so important. And again, it is one of the questions that for people that have to have an accessible toilet, that is one of those things that you always worry about and think about is okay, if I need a restroom, you know,
Yeah,
how close are they? Because
yeah,
it was interesting. I interviewed a young lady that's a wheelchair user, and she said that in some of the places they went in South America, that you really had to hunt to find an accessible restroom, and it
yeah.
became it became a very difficult situation at times. Okay.
Yes, yeah. So what we do is in places where we are not where travelers are not aware, we do the groundwork. So while they are planning a trip to like the inaccessible countries, what we do is we plan. Okay, how many hours of like after how many hours you'll need a restroom normally, and then we plan the travel accordingly. You will have identified toilets. You'll have identified cafes or eateries which would be accessible, serving, of course, authentic food, and then you can just go there.
Okay. So let me ask a quick question now, and just thinking about for cruise passengers. So if somebody came in somewhere on a cruise, given the normal duration of a port stay, and let's say that they weren't necessarily even that they had challenges, they were fully able. Could you arrange like a home lunch type thing or something so that they could actually get out and meet people?
Yeah, you want to have a high tea with the royal family in Kerala? Yes,
Huh?
I can do that. Or the royal family, so like not the cruise one, because in northern part also we have a royal family where you can have lunch with them. So yeah,
Ah,
you
very-
can spend a day with the royal family and in their own house. So you can actually see how they lived. I mean, they're not ruling anymore, but they still live with all the royalty and everything. Or in some places, they are actually, you'll be surprised how simply they live. So, yeah.
okay. So it sounds like not only for uh, disabled tourists, but for able-bodied tourists, that you have a lot to offer.
Yes, and this high tea I offered, it's for disabled travelers as well. So the whole idea is inclusion, right? Why do you need a separate travel company for disabled people? Why can't, and when the disabled are traveling, they're traveling with their family members who are non-disabled as well, or their friends who are non-disabled as well. So what? Let's talk about inclusion, that everyone travels together, and whether it's a non-disabled person or a disabled person, how should that make a difference?
Okay. Now, I looked at your website a while back, and it seemed like you had some accessible tours that were a little bit out of the norm for people that if they have a little bit of adventure in their soul, that there are some things that they could do that they might not think about doing as a tourist with challenges. So you want to talk about one
Yes.
or two of those real quickly?
Yeah, of course. So we do whitewater rafting in the famous river Ganges, which is like the most holy river in the country. And it's famous for its rapids. So we do whitewater rafting in there, the whole experience. So it's not like, okay, for disabled people, we'll subsidize it or, do the safer areas only or where there are less rapids. No, the experience is exactly the same what a non-disabled person would have, exactly the same route, starting point and the end point. It's just that we use specialized draft. We take extra safety measures. There, every person on the team is CPR trained and in like safety around you when you are doing that drafting. So we don't believe in subsidizing the experience at all. We do the homework to make it safer. So
Okay.
that is what it has to be, right? I mean, why we should compromise on the experience?
Okay.
And we do skiing for the blind and deaf. I mean, we are yet to get there for people with mobility impairment because we haven't sourced the equipment yet. That's one, because no one manufactures in here. But we do it in the best of slopes in north of the country where you have really good icing slopes and you can ski down. And we do a whole 6-day program where by the sixth day you can ski by yourself.
Okay. Well, very nice. It seemed like was there? Did I see something other than whitewater rafting that was a little bit adventurous? It seems like I saw something else. I remember. I don't remember what it was now.
Camping, hiking, trekking. We do this as well.
So all of
Um,
those.
yeah,
Yeah.
so you can. So we mix all of these as well. If people are more adventurous, it's not just limited to that. So if someone is going for rafting, so they can do camping also in the same trip,
Ah.
right? And they can do some hiking as well in that very trip. So that if you're traveling that much distance, why why do you have to use as much time as you can and do as much as you can? That's the point of adventure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, you know what, Neha? I have really enjoyed talking to you. It has been so much fun. I will put the link to your website in the comments. For people that are interested, I'm assuming that the thing to do would be to look at your website and see some of the things that you can do in the places and then start to reach out. Now, do you have specific tours? I want to ask one more question I just thought of. Do you have specific tours for people that are there on cruises so that you keep in mind the time the ship has to be when it gets there, when it leaves? So do you do
Yeah.
shore excursion type tours?
Yes, of course. So, like all the ports in this part of the world, we even do cruises. We work with the Royal Caribbean. We do cruises in this part of the world as well. And so, if you're taking a cruise, say from Hong Kong to Singapore via Vietnam, you can do all the shore excursions that are possible, plus the cruise. And if you are docking in the ports in India, so India has 4 docking ports, so you can have your shore excursions there as well. Or if you're docking in Thailand, you can have the shore excursions there as well. So yes, of course we do. With as per the interest, we'll, like, what do you say, plug in as many authentic experiences as you want into it.
Okay, and so that would work too if you were going to embark or debark a cruise in one of the places that you support. Then they could arrange like a say 2 or 3 nights pre-cruise or post-cruise.
Yes, yes, that's also possible. Yeah, absolutely. And we'll tell you in advance whether the sport would be teetering, they would be just be tendering, or it would be properly docked, because for with tendering, not many people can get off the cruise.
Yeah.
So this information you will have in advance,
Okay.
so that we can plan it accordingly.
Okay. Well, so thank you so very much, Neha. It has been such a joy talking to you. I appreciate you being with me today. And like I
Same
said, you
here.
and I will talk again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It was a great time. Thank you.
Okay. And for those of you that haven't subscribed and hit the like button, please do so. We'll see everybody next time.
Yes, hit subscribe and like.